Hey YouTube, it's your girl Pimp, and I'm back with another video. It's Friday, and Friday I like to highlight all my black folks. Today I have my friend, I have Jesse McCoy Esquire. Am I saying that right?
What up? What up?
Okay,
That's
okay.
right.
So before we jump into the video, introduce yourself, let the people know who you are, where you're from, what school you attended, all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, my name is Justin McCoy. Right now, I am the supervising attorney for the Duke Civil Justice Clinic, housed at Duke Law School. I am a graduate of Florida A&M University, proudly, as you can see. Also, North Carolina Central University School of Law. I've been practicing law in the state of North Carolina since 2008. And in practice of law, I have done everything from criminal defense, personal injury, music law, small business formation, and now I do a lot of housing advocacy for tenants.
Okay. Oh wow. So 8 years in it. Well, more than 8 years.
Yeah, more than 8 years.
What,
Yeah,
13? Oh, time is flying.
it is flying.
It's flying real bad. So let's get into it because a lot of people are being exposed for what Black people are already known.
Absolutely.
It's the whole police shooting. And to me, it's like yes, it's being more exposed. It's caught on camera, but it's like it's not going nowhere. They're still chaos. Even after getting one verdict, we got three more police shootings.
Mm-hmm.
What are we supposed to do as a community?
That's a great question, and I think for those of us who are old enough to remember, I remember a time where these things happened and people didn't believe it, and
Mm-hmm.
then Rodney King came out and we saw it on video and just knew that the cops were going to get convicted, and they didn't.
Right.
Then fast forward to now, and we're seeing basically images and videos of Black people murdered by police on the nightly news, to varying degrees of, I guess, justice coming. Justice usually being in the form of a brief suspension with pay, so pretty much a vacation, as opposed to any kind of convictions, jail time, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are being exposed to is some of the inherent biases that are built into the concept of policing and the concept of the criminal justice system in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to start off first off by saying that a lot of people were optimistic that all of the corporate interests and all of the allyship and stuff that we saw after George Floyd was going to yield an outcome of justice that shifts us into a different direction as a country.
Mm-hmm.
We did see that Derek Chauvin was convicted of the murders, but what we saw shortly thereafter appears to be an illicit response from the police across this nation that they were going to do what they want to do anyway.
Right.
Because the very next day, we see at least 3 police shootings in 3 different states for unarmed Black people.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I am most familiar with is the Andrew Brown Jr. situation occurring right here in North Carolina in a small town called Elizabeth City. Um, One of the reasons why this case is so important is because a lot of the issues that people have expressed about policing, is particularly policing in Black communities, this is like daily life in small town America because they know people don't have money or resources to be able to do anything about
Right.
it. And what this family has done is in bringing on the resources of Ben Crump and Bakari Sellers and Chance Lynch and Harry Daniels and Chantel Lassiter, they've brought attorneys out here who want to see this case through. But even now, we're being exposed to some of the shortcomings of the system. One is that prosecutors have a wide array of discretion in these kinds of cases. And this prosecutor in particular, Mr. Womble of Pasquotank County, has given the officers every benefit of the doubt that he possibly can, almost to the point where he sounds like a criminal defense attorney as opposed to a prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
He has been selective about what parts of the videotape get released and who it can be released to. He has been suggestive in saying what the tape actually shows as opposed to just showing the tape. And it seems like he plans to just kind of be against any kind of traction that will provide the transparency that is necessary
Mm-hmm.
for the criminal justice system to work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So, because we are taught in our gun classes, our carry conceal classes, that,
Mhm.
you know, because I told a friend this too. I said I knew he was going to use the car as the weapon because we are
Absolutely.
taught that, you know, anything that can cause bodily injury is a threat. You know, so that whether it be a car, if somebody take a bat, even if somebody took a glass of, say, orange juice and busted upside your head, you know, that can be a form of, you can have the right to defend yourself. You know, even spitting on people is assault. You know, so it's kind of like a slap in the face because it's like, you know, he wasn't trying to hurt those officers. He probably didn't know who the hell they was. You know,
Right.
from how I saw the tape. I just saw some people driving down the road fast as hell, going to get somebody.
Mhm.
You know, I didn't see.
Agreed.
I could be wrong, but I didn't see any like no nothing that said police or any sort. You know, no type of uniforms really. I mean, how is one supposed to know who is this and who not is this? You know, you got to judge.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of layers to that. I think the first layer, and unfortunately we're always limited because we only have the piece of the video that has been released publicly.
Right.
The first layer to that is the video we're seeing is body cam video of officers who were assembled in the bed of a truck. It looks to be about 5 or 6 of them, all with assault rifles.
Mm-hmm.
And so the video starts kind of mid-action where they're jumping off the truck with assault rifles and running up. So just to give people a sense, this was supposed to be an investigation for drug-related activity. And they came down with the assault rifle in a small town in North Carolina, and there's one black guy in the car. So as far as his perspective is concerned, we got 6 people with assault rifles running up. No announcement,
Exactly.
no
Exactly.
nothing. And he doesn't do, what I probably would have in a situation, which is step on the gas and try to run over whoever and get out. He actually is going roughly about 5 miles an hour, trying to like not hit anyone to turn and get away.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that is important is because if he is actively trying to turn and get away, particularly if the officers have not announced themselves, then he can't be using a deadly weapon against an officer. He couldn't have put anybody's life in jeopardy, which
Mm-hmm.
would mean that it negates their ability to use deadly force against him.
Mm-hmm.
They decided to do so. And what's telling is the autopsy shows that his wound was inflicted through the back of the head. So that means he was shot as he was fleeing. Just so the audience knows, like fleeing police is not sufficient to justify deadly force. So, if he was fleeing, they could have chased him. They could have, called in reinforcements to try to block off the road later on. Like you don't get a right to just shoot because you feel like it. So these are crucial elements of the video that we just don't have to know how this thing started off. Initially, the DA wanted to push for the fact that this person was armed and put the police lives in danger. But the problem is they searched the car and they didn't find any weapons. So he's unarmed. And if he's unarmed, the only thing that the DA could have argued for as a deadly weapon would be the actual car.
Mm-hmm.
And that is very problematic because you have to remember a DA's job is to scope out whether there is probable cause to support criminal charges. It's not to absolve someone of doing something wrong. The
Mm-hmm.
issue is it more probable than not that Mr. Brown was trying to flee and thus shot and killed by police officers against his rights? Or do they feel like the police officers were justified in their shooting? And I feel like with the snippet of the video that we've seen so far, we just don't have any sufficient information to establish that, Mr. Brown was wrong and he was attacking police. We don't see that despite the narrative. The other thing I want to emphasize to people also is, I never miss an opportunity to tell people about the power of your vote. DAs are elected officials in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the people who make up that circuit or that area are going to be the folks who pick the DA that's in charge. The DA is obviously hedging his bets right now with law enforcement. So I feel like if you know that, then, keep in mind, he can't have that job forever unless he wins re-election and gets to come back. We also know that his office used to be in the sheriff's department, which creates all kinds of other issues as far as conflicts of interest in and of itself. But he seems committed to doing the job that he's planning to do to help these officers get away.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot to digest and
Absolutely.
to understand. Wow. Well, I'm definitely gonna keep up to date on that and see what happens, because it was just like, wow, another slap in the face.
Absolutely.
And I think
Yep.
black folks are sick of that. We so sick of getting slapped in the face, with these gestures. And like I was telling my friend about the NBA, I'm like, yeah, they made that gesture in the beginning, but now they want to go back to how it used to be. And you got fans spitting on players.
Mhm.
And I said, I never see them do this to white players. It's always the black players.
Mhm.
You want to throw stuff at them, you want to spit on them, and then you get mad when they react. If he would have reacted and jumped in that crowd, he would have got suspended.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
all types of stuff.
I think there's a rich history in this country of the policing, both official and unofficial policing of black bodies anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I always like to tell people, the concept of police was invented during slavery to recapture slaves and bring them back to the owner. So, that's kind of the starting point. That means that it's bad from the root. But the other thing is, white citizens throughout the South were deputized to be able to engage in the return of slaves as well. So that means you didn't even have to be any kind of certified expert to go and get people. You just had to be a white person who wanted to capture black people. And that has bled into our society as we go. Everything from the Karens who call police on folks in Oakland barbecuing, to people who feel like they have the right to intrude or question black people about what they do. And what is also important is that NBA players or any kind of professional athlete, they're prominent, they're visible, and they are allegedly doing much better than the rest of everybody else
Right.
financially.
Right.
And that makes some people angry, right? Like some people get upset because LeBron is rich, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what they try to do is try to put you back in your place by throwing popcorn on you or, spitting at you or whatever the case may be, because they know that they're protected, but you can't do anything. And if you do something, they could sue you and take
Yep.
some of your money. So
Yep.
it's on all levels. I also think, as far as black people go, we have to be cognizant about kind of what we view justice to be, because I don't know in America that we're ever going to have the kind of just and equal, fair society that we want. We're just not, until America does a deep dive into fixing the root of how we were formed in general. It's just not going to happen. People are going to cling to their privilege and their supremacy in some ways.
Absolutely.
And so, when we look at these situations, what we know is police aren't necessarily harassing LeBron James kids because he got money and resources to do something about it.
Right.
They're harassing the kids that are in the small towns and the inner cities and all that, because they know that these kids are poor. They're not going to have the resources to fight any kind of federal litigation for a 1983 civil rights claim.
Right.
Most of these places, most of these officers are protected by some form of legal immunity, qualified immunity. So that's a whole nightmare to try to get through. And you're just not going to find somebody who's going to be able to do that pro bono, even if they want to. They just can't afford to do it. So they know that they always have victims, and there's a presumption of criminality that I think flows with just being Black in America in general. So unfortunately, that's kind of all the stuff we deal with. I wish I had an answer for, how do we move forward, but I'm at the point now where I'm just tired of seeing my people always be the ones that are victimized. So I think where we're progressing, unfortunately, is a situation where folks are going to start saying, well, look, if I got to go, you coming with me, And I think if we progress down that way, then everything falls apart.
Yes.
I am not one of the people who believe that all police officers are bad, but I am a person who believes that we make it difficult for good police officers to say anything about the bad police officers because they know it's going to be career suicide.
Yes.
And severe consequences, maybe even life and death consequences for them. So the people, and I don't think it's a minority of people who are bad. I definitely think it's at least half of them that's bad. But I think the ones that are bad, not only are they creating a bad name for everybody else, but they put everybody in jeopardy because if folks are on guard about police, they're not going to stop and analyze what your record was when you come around that corner. They're just going to say, nope, I got to protect myself first. And I think America isn't prepared for that, right? So something has to be done. And I don't like the corporations kind of making money off of Black pain and trauma either. Because people had George Floyd clips all over their commercials, but they didn't do anything.
Right.
So I don't know. I want to be in a position where we can fix things, but I also know in America, unless we're going to go to the very root, the very beginning of this and establish some form of equity, then it's probably a lost cause.
Whew, man. Okay, so last subject, abortion laws. I guess the main question everybody always has is how can white males tell women what to do with their bodies? You know, at this point, like what I always say it's a overplay for underlay when it comes to especially abortion, because it's like, why are you guys pushing this so hard? You know, why are you even to the point where it's like if someone is raped, they still don't want them to have an abortion, and it's just like, are you kidding me right now? That's a traumatic experience for somebody.
Absolutely.
Raise a child that you probably didn't either want at the time or want at all, but was forced to have. Like, what gives them the right is what everybody want to know.
Well, if the rich white men were here, they would say that the virtue of them being rich and white men gives them the right. But I think what this comes down to is kind of political theater. What they do is they always try to catch people off guard. There's the quintessential case everybody knows is Roe versus Wade that just establishes pretty much choice. And what happens is there's been an attempt to erode that because there are money interests who certainly want everybody who gets pregnant to have that kid. And they pay a lot of money to a certain party to put out certain people who will say certain absurd and ridiculous things in order to keep the money flowing in. But it also is an attempt, I think, to try to oppress marginalized communities. If you think about it, the people, this is going to sound controversial, but I don't think that abortion was ever really something that was triumphed by one community or another. I think it was something that everybody's community was doing, but white people were resourceful and had means to hide it, cover it up, get away with it, and it not be known, as opposed to poor marginalized communities where, just like we don't have anything else, largely because of the rich white man, it's the same deal. Like you don't want people to be able to have agency over their own bodies and over themselves, because it all goes back to this concept that we need to be able to police what you do and how you do it. I think what's telling is these same interests never seem to want to invest or have any money in helping out in communities where, it's children who don't have rec centers, and it's children who are already here who need resources and services, and they never have any money for that. But they certainly have money to tell people what to do with their body while they're pregnant. That's very interesting to me. I also think that, part of the forces that are racist are also sexist. So if that's the case, you're going to have rich white men sitting in Washington making rules for, what's happening all across the nation. And the last thing is abortion laws always come into effect when you're already on the ropes with something else, right? Because they know that if they just straight up went after the push for requiring that no one can get an abortion, If they did that and your attention isn't diverted to something else, then everybody would galvanize and say this is stupid. People should have a right to choose, whatever the case may be. But what they do is they always hit you when you least expect it. So we out here talking about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd and all this other stuff, and they were like, "Oh, peak time, right? Like peak time to come with." Before it was everybody dealing with COVID and the coronavirus and like trying to figure out how we're gonna go back to work or how we're gonna take care of bills and rent in the interim. And they were like, "Oh, this is like a good time because your attention's divided." The other thing you'll see right now is most states, particularly states in the South, have been changing and revamping their election districting and strategies so that your power to vote is a lot less because they're salty about how this presidential election turned out. And they don't want Black people in these city centers kind of having the say to be able to, dictate who's going to be in leadership positions. So all of this stuff is coming from the same kind of racist tree that is seeking to keep the white man in power. And unfortunately, in America, the problem is that marginalized communities, particularly Black people, we only make up 13.7% of the population. So just standing toe to toe, we don't have the numbers on a just outright popular vote to be able to win on our measures unless we build coalitions. But those coalitions aren't always pro-Black, right? So those coalitions might be Black on the issue, but they want, unity in exchange for their temporary Blackness. And I think that's kind of the gripe that a lot of people have, like with things like the Democratic Party, stuff like that, where it's like, y'all help us on one or two things, but you're not helping us overall with equity. My message to Black people is, I don't think this country is ever going to provide equity. That doesn't mean that you don't continue to push for it. That doesn't mean that you don't continue to advocate and call it out when it messes up. But if this country wanted to provide equity to Black people, they would do it. They have money to fly tanks over to Afghanistan. They have money to take oil out of Saudi Arabia. They have money to do whatever it is they want to do. They pay reparations to everybody else except for Black people. So if they wanted to do it, they could do it, but they won't do it because they don't have the desire to see equitable Black populations. And the reason for that is that if you gave Black people trillions of dollars, when we are the ones who spend the trillions of dollars, and then we can shift and own the resources, then it's game over for them, right? So I encourage Black people, if you don't have the means already, just work on you, just do the best you can. If you do have the means, reinvest in your own community. And not just that, but look at Blackness as an international scale, because we can learn a lot of things from our brothers in Africa, our sisters in Africa, and they are learning a lot of stuff from us as well. And I hope one day to be able to see international Black organizations that are able to come into the community and fix a lot of the issues so that we don't need any kind of white intermediary to do so.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Brother McCoy, this has been great, great information. Like I said, we always have these conversations, but it's good to hear from somebody who actually in the field, been doing this for a while, to give us more information about it. Let the people know, because I know you got a podcast. Let them know how they can reach you, how they can hear your podcast and all that good stuff before we get out of here.
Yeah. So you can find us. The best way to find us is on IG at the PanAfricana Show. It's a podcast I do with my friend Fred Nantra from Ghana. And we're just trying to bridge the gap across the African diaspora. So we try to have voices from all over on to tell us about what's going on in their part of the world. And we're trying to ultimately assemble a network of people who can know each other and help each other in many different ways. Yeah, absolutely. And then also for those of you who are on Twitter, you can find me at J Hamilton McCoy 2 on Twitter. And I'm on TikTok too, I guess. I'm J Hamilton McCoy on TikTok. Just telling my fabulous attorney-client stories from times in the past that I had some very crazy situations.
Okay.
So Yeah, definitely reach out. And if there's anything I can help with, I'm glad to be of assistance.
Thank you. We appreciate you, brother, and you too. This has been another great video. I will check y'all out next week. Peace.